So one thing I get asked a lot is, hey Mush, besides making a fool of yourself online, do you have any hobbies? Well, everybody has a hobby, and to that I say, yes, I do. I collect video games. You got a glimpse of it in my last video, go check that out if you haven't. But I have myself a decent collection of games I've collected over the years. I see video games as an art form and like to show that, by hoarding the plastic that contains them. I got my inspiration by, shocker, James Rolfe and his character the AVGN. Seeing his nerd room and all the games he owned really inspired me because I wanted something like that. It was so cool to me, being able to pick out any game you wanted, anytime you wanted, like at a game store, but in your home. A true shrine to my autism. Seeing all these game room tours online just wanted me to have something like that, but some people don't. Takes up too much room. That's why they go for digital. No maintenance, no clutter, it's all in one place, and I understand people want the convenience. But I can see the writing on the wall. My hobby of collecting games is on death's door. With more and more announcements of more retailers pushing out physical games, Microsoft very recently shut down their department for physical media. It's very obvious where the companies want things to go. Now, no, I'm not going to quit playing new games just because I can't buy it in a plastic case. Don't worry, I'll always find a way. But yes, it's pretty obvious why things are turning out this way. But I just want to share my little piece on why I prefer to cling to my plastic. I do not trust corporations with my purchases. I just don't, and you shouldn't either. We need physical to be an option, even if companies want to cut it out. This not only applies to video games, but to movies and TV as well. You should never trust digital-only goods for a multitude of reasons. And I've decided to put together this handy little guide on why you should always doubt your digital purchases. Strap in, sit back, and listen. This guide was made by the Microplastics Gang.
The day you mess with scurvy, are you wish you never born? When the coconut is mine, then you'll feel this pirate scorn. When the coconut is mine, then you'll feel this pirate scorn.
Number 1. Lack of time and storage. Now, we're starting off with something that just really gives me an excuse to talk about absurd file sizes. Games and movies take up space. Some people like to organize them on bookshelves, and I understand if some are not capable of doing that, nor want to hassle with that. Some just want to turn something on and just let their brain do the rest of the work. Regarding movies and TV shows, everyone has shifted over to streaming, so this isn't really an issue. For games, however, this is a completely different story. One of the biggest arguments for digital games is that it is way more convenient to have everything on your console instead of having to get up and change discs every time you want to switch to a new game, even though it takes like 20 seconds. But more than likely, the average person who doesn't want to change discs is probably American, and Americans love sitting and letting the pounce back on. But it is a positive. Having everything you want right at your fingertips to play. Well, that seems to be the illusion anyway. Despite being in a more condensed box, the games still take up space in one way or another. And over the years, the size of these games have ballooned up massively. Now, installing a game onto your hard drive from the disk also takes time, but downloading them from a storefront is a beast within itself. Back in the day, these games would only be a few gigabytes big because they were smaller titles for a few dollars, didn't take up much space, and because internet speeds were much slower. We are far and away from that now. The future these companies want now is downloading gigantic AAA games that take up almost your entire hard drive. We're talking games that easily go into the triple digits in terms of file size. It's been long known, Western developers cannot compress worth a shit. You know Elden Ring, that massive game that took the world by storm? 60 gigabytes in size. Meanwhile, you got your yearly Call of Duties reaching 240 gigabytes with hardly any content in them. It'll take you longer to download the damn game than it will for you to complete the campaign. You could fit maybe 3 Modern Warfare 3s on a launch PS5. So when the games take up so much damn space, you're going to have to, naturally, delete one to make some. But that also means if you ever get the itch to play through the game you just deleted again, you're going to have to reinstall it. For physical, that means you gotta use the disc again, which will take a bit of time. For digital, you gotta re-download the whole damn game again, which depending on your circumstances could take 5 minutes or 5 hours. It is very subjective how long these games take to download, but I imagine most people also won't be too keen on having to constantly re-download triple-digit gigabyte games no matter the case. I mean, that's convenient, right? Having only a handful of games on one large terabyte drive and having to constantly delete and re-download stuff. This is the future of gaming we all dreamed of. waiting instead of playing. Number 2. The Waldorf Garden. If you've ever taken any economics class in high school, you probably know of the concept of supply and demand. The supply and demand of a product are reliant on each other and will constantly shift in price and availability based on how many people want it and how many are readily available. Every single sold object in history has followed this rule, and probably isn't changing until the human race goes extinct. In the old days, video games also followed this rule. They'd get produced in the factory and shipped off to multiple retailers to sell the game. You could get them from this place, or this place, or this place, or even this place. You had all sorts of places you could get your games from. Now, of course, all these places would really prefer you get the game from their store, so they would have deals on video games all the time to entice you to buy it from them. Walmart was always the best place to get Switch games from because they were already $10 off compared to most other places. This kind of pricing creates competition. You had choices, a ton of them. If we're moving into the digital future, all the choices are now gone. You get all your games from one place now, the big company storefronts, and you play by their rules and you pay their prices. Retailers usually had the most control over the physical games. If they wanted to sell games at incredibly discounted prices, they could. Ever heard of clearance? You know, when something would get marked down to an incredibly low price so someone would buy it and it now had space for newer stuff. I walked into Walmart the other day and they had Shin Megami Tensei 5 on clearance for $20. I scooped that up immediately. That's a steal. Well, in the Digiverse, shelf space doesn't exist. It's just code. It's unlimited. It's never going to run out. So the concept of clearance will never apply here. Walmart has supposedly started dropping copies of Starfield down to 3 cents a copy. Say what you will about the quality of the game, but a huge AAA game being marked down to a nickel is absurd to think about. Now, do you think you will ever see Microsoft sell the game for a nickel in the Microsoft store? Todd would have a fit. Condensing everything to just a few digital storefronts, we are objectively being given less options to pick our games from. If you play on PC, of course you have more choices. You have a ton of different launchers and storefronts, even though some are extremely hated. Consoles, on the other hand, are a different story. You will only be getting them from their digital storefronts, and nowhere else. That is your only choice. Now, you could make the argument that consoles themselves are your way of choosing, but that also shines a light on the fact to even access these, you're basically paying a several $100 fee up front for the systems to even be given the privilege of buying from their store. Imagine having to pay a fucking bouncer in front of GameStop to even enter the store. The only competition now is between the games themselves on the storefronts. Yes, these storefronts have sales on games all the time, but it's usually on the smaller indie titles and a few old AAA games. The thing is, the devs, especially the big ones, have no real obligation to drop the prices. In fact, they could choose to never drop the prices, ever. Looking at you, Nintendo. It's no secret that Nintendo games never drop in price or value, but I want to show you all something to back my point up. This website is called Deku Deals. This is a nice little website that will show you what current deals across all platforms are going on, across different retailers and digital storefronts. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, I just want to use this website to make a point. Here we have a small little indie game called Breath of the Wild. You know, it's going to turn 7 years old next month. Ugh. But anyway, this chart shows us the timeline of all the times the game has dropped in price, with physical and digital games lumped together, and considering its age, it's no surprise. But let's turn off the physical sales and see what it looks like. Oh, would you look at that? Significantly reduced. In fact, according to the chart now, not counting all the retailer codes, the only times the game would ever drop in price on the Nintendo eShop was during the holidays. Ooh, wow, what a bargain. A game dropping in price once a year. How convenient and money saving. You can find multiple examples with multiple games. Mario Odyssey? Same thing. Smash Bros, Mario Kart. It even happens with Sony. God of War, Bloodborne, even Sony's movies are having their price drops limited. The games will only go on sale when they want them to go on sale. Your options are being taken away. They want to cut the retailers out of the picture to make sure only they get the full cut without any compromises. But at the same time, we're being compromised because... Number 3. Digital storefronts are dog shit. People used to have horror stories of walking in GameStop. All the awkward interactions, the fact the place smelled like piss and sweat, having most of the store be cluttered up with toys and junk, and then the cashier tries their hardest to get you to sign up for some dumb crap you really don't want to. All this trouble just to buy a game. A lot may view it as a positive that you no longer have a wall of soulless Funko Pop staring at you and judging you for trying to buy a copy of Hatsune Miku. Some may prefer not having to interact with people. All that trouble is now gone. Until you see the digital storefronts you have to deal with now. All the console digital storefronts are horrendous in a bunch of ways. Most of the time, they're a complete mess to get through just to download games. I feel a sense of dread every time I need to access the PSN or Nintendo eShop. Oh yeah, I should say, I've been a Nintendo and PlayStation guy my whole life. I've only used Xbox for some exclusives, so you're not going to see me mention them much here, but I'm fully aware they have their own set of issues. But this is mostly going to be focusing on the other two, so my apologies to those Xbox diehards. I know you're out there somewhere. Steam is probably the gold standard for a digital storefront. There's a ton of different tags, filters, and labels to really nail down what you want to see. I mean, there's a lot of trash you gotta dig through, but still, it's still the best we have on the market right now. But that's not really much competition. The PSN store has been complete garbage since its inception on the PS3. This thing was like a slug moving through molasses. Look at how you search games on this thing. Holy shit! Could you be any slower and more cumbersome? And guess what? They loved this search engine so much, they brought it over to the PS4! For the first few years anyway. They eventually updated it because I guess enough people complained about it. The Nintendo eShop is also a mess to get through. It feels like Nintendo hasn't updated the shop service since it was first set up in 2017. It feels like the thing is even struggling to load. The Switch eShop feels like a car that's ready to break down at any given moment. This could just be my internet, but I don't know. I've seen other people complain about it too. The PS5 store is mostly a rehash of the PS4 store, but it has its own issues, which I'll get into in a bit. The one thing all these storefronts have in common is, they are absolutely flooded with garbage games. Now, it is true that physical didn't stop garbage games from flooding system libraries, the Wii being living proof of that.
Oh yeah, garbage!
But the bar for entry to make games for the system was still significantly higher. You still needed a lot of money to print physical discs and have them shipped off to stores. But now, any Jimmy Two Shoes with any sort of coding knowledge can put their games on digital storefronts, and that's exactly what they do. These storefronts are flooded with crap that would never see the light of day in a game store. Hey, want to come over and play Calculator for $9.99? How about these puzzle games with AI-generated art? How about this skateboarding game with copyrighted characters and music that these companies definitely did not give permission for? Yeah, most of this is on the eShop, but the PSN store also has its fair share of stinkers, so it's not off the hook either. So the only true way to find anything worth on these storefronts is to use prior hand knowledge of what you're looking for from a third-party source. The PS5 store is also a cluttered mess, but it also has one of the strangest issues with physical and digital games. One of the things about the PS5 was the PS5 upgrade system. You know, if you get a certain physical PS4 version of a game that's also on PS5, you get the option to upgrade to the PS5 version for completely free. It's a nice consumer-friendly benefit. But of course, Sony found some way to completely screw it up. How this service works is, when you put the game in, it reads it and then asks you if you want to upgrade. And of course, anyone in their right mind would say yes, and then it downloads a digital version off the PSN store. But it still requires you to use the disc to ensure you still own the game. But the major issue arises when you realize the PS4 version's data is still on that disc. And when you insert a game into the system, it automatically starts installing it to the hard drive. So every time you start the damn system back up, it will start downloading the PS4 version of the game and take up resources. And you have to manually cancel this download every time you boot the console up. You don't need two versions of the same game on the console. The PS5 is in its third year, and they still have not fixed this. Although they're obviously trying to phase physical out, so it's likely done on purpose to annoy you, so you'll just buy the digital version instead. If they want us to shift over to digital, and this is what they have us work with, that can only spell trouble in the future. Hey, at least I'm getting my exercise when going out game shopping. The only thing that's getting exercised here is my patience. Number 4. Digital games are constantly pulling Houdinis. It's been said before and it needs to be screamed to the heavens. Game preservation is a joke. Companies don't really care about keeping all their games readily available for people to play unless they can charge them again. Game preservation is significantly more difficult than movie or book preservation, as a lot more factors are put into play for them to be true to the original vision. Console hardware, emulation, it's a whole can of worms I don't feel like fully opening. But one thing absolutely needs to be said. Do not trust companies when it comes to preserving digital games. They're not gonna do it. You can't keep making a physical game forever. Eventually those resources are going to have to be put to something else more current. But the games will stay in circulation in the secondhand market around the world for a long time. Millions of these are produced and they're usually pretty easy to get a hold of. Their prices, however, are a different story. The retro game market is also its own can of worms, but you can still get a hold of these games if you wanted to. Digital games are completely different because they're on the company of choice's servers, and what happens to them is completely out of your control. Contracts hit a deadline, licenses expire, publishers and developers can have issues, and when any of these happen, the game is probably removed from all digital storefronts. This normally wouldn't be a problem for physical, as there are plenty of copies in circulation, but in these cases, the circulation is completely cut off. There is no way to buy the game anymore. It's been lost to the digital archives, never to see the light of day again. If a game was only released in this format, it's damn near impossible to find a way to play it, legally speaking. One YouTuber I watch whenever he uploads is Iron Pineapple. He has a series where he covers Souls-likes not many people have heard of, and I like this series a lot. A lot of hidden gems can be found here. One game he covered was called Vigil: The Longest Night, a Souls-like Metroidvania with an art style I really like. This one caught my eye compared to the rest, and then I went on Steam to check it out, only, surprise! The game has been delisted from both Steam and the Switch eShop. Apparently the developer and the publisher had a falling out, and the game, with no announcement or warning, was delisted, with no sign of ever coming back. So, because the two parties had problems and disagreements, I gotta suffer because of it. I don't get to play the game anymore. I don't know these people. I just wanted to buy their crap. What did I do?
Hey, little Magic Mush last minute update here. During the making of this video, they've actually brought the game back to Steam and the Switch eShop. It's like they personally did this to spite me.
Any company can just snatch a game from the servers whenever they want, gone without a trace, with no way to get it again. There is an entire website called Delisted Games, dedicated to archiving which games have been taken from the consumers on digital storefronts, and it's closing in on almost 2,000 games. This Legend of Korra game, made by Platinum Games of all people, was only released digitally on consoles, and when the license expired, it was taken down and now just a piece of history. You can no longer play it without jumping through illegal hoops. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of the most infamous cases of a game being delisted. It was lauded for being an excellent retro-style beat-em-up, but once it was taken down, people were pissed. A ton of people rallied for the game to be brought back for years until finally it was brought back in 2021 and even given a physical release to make sure it doesn't happen again. But every game cannot be so lucky. All of the big three have wiped entire libraries of digital games simply because they don't want to pay the servers to keep them up anymore. Microsoft got rid of hundreds of games on the Xbox 360 Marketplace and the Indie Store. Sony was going to delete the PSN store for the PS3 and PSP and wipe out thousands of games, generations of PlayStation games with the PS Classics, and Sony was about to get rid of all of them with no replacement. The backlash was so immense, Sony actually retracted their statement and decided to keep the stores up, for now. So you can at least delay this if enough people rally against it, unless your name is Nintendo. Nintendo has shown quite a number of times throughout their history, they do not care. They do not care how much you bitch, complain, or rally against them. They do not care. They have shut down the Wii, 3DS, and Wii U storefronts. All those old classic Nintendo games with Virtual Console, they're all gone, with no substantial replacement. You will have to move heaven and earth to change Nintendo's mind on something, because it's next to impossible to do so. Nintendo has made the most baffling digital delistings out of any company I've ever seen. For Mario's 35th anniversary, Nintendo released the Mario 3D All-Stars Collection, a collection of Mario's popular 3D platformers for people on the Switch to enjoy in one package. It wasn't perfect, but if you wanted to play these games for the first time, it was a great deal. Except for the fact, Nintendo also announced that the collection would only be available digitally for half a year, and then they would remove it. Why? Why would you remove it? You know, the most popular video game character of all time, and you're only going to allow a collection of some of his most popular games to be available for half a year? Why would you willingly throw away money like that? You have nothing to lose keeping these games up for people to keep downloading. Why do this? And it is sort of a non-issue. The game was also released physically, and it sold millions. So there are copies easily available to be played, but just imagine if it was only released digitally. A collection of gaming history, put out there only to be enjoyed for less than a year, and then shoved back in the vault. I imagine if Nintendo had the ability to come to your house and stash all the physical copies away, they'd do that too. Since all the companies are trying to push us into only having digital downloads, I'm pretty confident in saying delisting is going to become much more common. So for Mario's 50th anniversary, look forward to a collection that is only released digitally and only available to be bought in 3 months, and then Nintendo can make you wait another 5 years for another collection to take away from you. This is the future we chose. Number 5. The physical versus digital ratio is a complete lie. One of the strange things about this whole shift to digital only stuff is there is this weird sort of superiority some people have about being a digital only gamer. Like, they actively champion this death of physical games. Those old boomers need to let go of their plastic. This is the future, being right under the company's thumb and letting them have full control. Nobody buys discs anymore. I fully believe this must be either hardcore fanboys or paid shills. And also, nobody buying discs anymore. That isn't really true. You see constant news reports about this digital to physical ratio and how insignificant physical is, except for the fact this number is always extremely disingenuous. See, what this looks like in a clickbait headline is, the games sold like tiddlywinks in boxed form because everyone ran to the clunky-ass PSN store and bought them there instead. But when you read into the actual reports, you see this isn't actually what it seems. What this actually is physical copies versus all digital media on the store. So it's not physical games compared to digital games like it sounds. It's actually physical games versus digital games, DLC, microtransactions, anything that is bought on the store is kind of towards the digital ratio here. So the odds are just automatically stacked against physical here. Like, no shit you're gonna sell more 99-cent skins than $60 physical games by the sheer nature of how cheap it is. So the numbers are extremely inflated in the digital's favor, and damn near every single company reports their numbers like this. Hell, Nintendo counts their online subscriptions as part of their digital ratio, so if you buy Nintendo Online, you're contributing towards their digital sales. But in some reports, one might point to the fact that they do compare digital and physical game ratios, like here. However, this is also not entirely what it seems. The term used here, full game, what exactly constitutes as a full game? Well, I'm going to assume this is for anything that would qualify as a game and is sold among them, but this is also lumping in those smaller, below $10 titles with it as well. All those little indie games you could buy for a few bucks, those also qualify as full games. The small indie games make sense for being sold digital only so that they can keep their low prices. But these companies are lumping them together with AAA games to make physical sales look pitiful in comparison. Whether it's Elden Ring or it's Calculator for $9.99, the companies are going to lump them together regardless. So do we have any sales numbers that aren't heavily skewed towards digital? Well, actually, we just recently got some unbiased numbers from an unlikely source. In that Insomniac Games leak that happened in December of last year, some documents were leaked that showed us a completely different picture to what the companies are pushing. Now, this was a pretty bad leak. You know, a bunch of games got leaked, a couple of documents, and even some personal information and passports. So out of respect, I'm not going to show anything in this video from that. In fact, I don't even think I could show it if I wanted to. I'm not going to risk getting taken to court by Sony just to prove my point. But I do want to say, the physical game ratio is significantly higher than what all these clickbait headlines tell you. In fact, physical is still outdoing digital in multiple ways. So take that for what you will. You can do your own research. I'm not going to risk that. I have no doubts Nintendo's case is very similar. No clue about Microsoft because they have Game Pass and all that. Hell, very recently you get news reports about games breaking physical records and still outdoing digital versions. This is evidence physical and digital should coexist, not have physical just get absorbed by digital completely. So why are they fluffing up their digital numbers like this instead of just being upfront about it? Well, they don't want to keep making physical games. If they stop the production line, they can save literal millions, not to mention that retailers don't get a cut anymore. You are buying straight from them off their stores and they get the majority of the money. This isn't about cutting down plastics, this isn't about being eco-friendly or the fact that nobody buys physical anymore. This is about saving those corporations a ton of money. They can boast to their investors about how much money not making physical games and shipping them out to stores can save. That's why they almost always lump every single digital purchase on the store together, and it gives you that pitiful ratio number for physical, and more reason to kill it off. Every time one of these reports come out, just be cautious about it, because more than likely, it's not actually true. Number 6. You will own nothing. And now, it's time for probably the most infamous of all digital downsides. Everyone knows it, even the ones who push for digital know it. You do not actually own your digital games. Yeah, they're under your account, but whose servers are you on at the end of the day? The companies have full control over every single one of your purchases, and there is nothing you can do about it. For well over a decade, companies have been trying their hardest to stomp out the used games market. From putting one-time codes to unlock online modes, or Xbox trying to make the Xbox One not even play used games. And with digital, they can finally achieve that. There is no such thing as a used game in the digital world. You can't trade them or lend it to a friend. You get them all brand new from your company of choice, each individual person. So not only do they stomp out the used game market, but they have the full right to take away your purchases for whatever reason they want. You signed the TOS after all. And you're probably thinking, oh, they can't just snatch something I already paid for away. Oh, they can. And they have. Quite a number of times this has happened, a lot anecdotal, and other times it affected a ton of people. This case was making the rounds late last year. This dude was playing Apex Legends and in chat sent the most basic ass trash talk possible. STFU. He got reported, and then not only did EA ban him from Apex Legends, they banned his entire EA Origins account. They took all of his games away from him for this nothing burger. This shows you the true power they have over your purchases. If you piss the right person off, they can report you and have everything you bought taken away, with no refunds. And it's not even exclusive to games either. Digital movies and TV shows have probably been taken away from people more than anything. Warner Brothers wrote off a bunch of shows as tax write-offs in 2022, and as a result, they were pulled from all streaming services. But not only that, any digital copies that were already purchased were also snatched away from people who bought them. And a lot of these shows didn't even have physical releases. There is no legal way to watch them now. Sony has sort of swept a recent controversy under the rug, involving digital Discovery movies on PlayStation. The licensing expired, so they were going to pull every single Discovery movie purchased on PlayStation from everybody's libraries. But the backlash was, yet again, so immense, they were able to update the license so your Discovery movies live to see another day. Damn, are we sure Sony is from Japan and not France? They constantly fold harder than a lawn chair.
I surrender!
Nintendo should take notes. I don't trust this to last either, so please buy your movies physically instead of on PlayStation. And if you're wondering, yes, these companies are fully aware they have full control over your purchases. When eventually prodded enough, they'll admit to it. Amazon, in a semi-recent lawsuit, has gone on record saying, no, you don't own the digital content you buy from us. You're buying a license to consume said content, and they can be revoked at any time. So, yeah, you're not buying anything with digital. You're renting from them. Rental stores never actually died. Blockbuster, Movie Gallery, and the others shutting down wasn't the end of game rentals. They've just now evolved into digital storefronts, where you now have to pay full price to rent a game, movie, or TV show you will never own. If a company wants to snatch all your games or movies away, they can, and, well, you can just suck it up, Buttercup. It's the future. Ubisoft has gone on record to say we should all get used to not owning our games. Well, they didn't actually say that. It was out of context clickbait. But let's be real, that's what a lot of companies are actually thinking. But hey, at least you don't have to get up to change discs, right? Number 7. I'm out of topics. This is the end of the video. Well, we're done for the day. I decided to make this video because with all the news of retailers fizzling out physical game shelf space, it's obvious what's coming. I still enjoy current year gaming and all the recent games coming out, but we need a balance of physical and digital, because I know damn well companies will take full advantage of having us all under their thumb, and it can only spell disaster. I'm not going to be a doom and gloomer because, well, I have ways to get around this. I don't hate the concept of digital. If you're a digital only person, that's fine. But you have to come to the realization, you are not in control. You could say physical is barely much better these days, and maybe you're right, but it's really just that last barrier keeping us from fully succumbing to consumerism. I hope anyone watching this video takes into consideration of what you've witnessed, and if you don't care, I don't blame you. I mean, we can't really do much here. It's yet again not up to me, not up to you or anybody else, but the companies behind everything. And if they want to save those few bucks not making physical, we can't really stop them. But never forget, it didn't used to be like that. God bless, like and subscribe, and good night. Never let companies take your hobbies away. Enjoy them in the way you want to.
Oh yeah, garbage.
You gotta get a job. What is this achieve? What does this achieve? What does that achieve what? What is this gonna do? Mowing my game's over. Maybe you'll quit playing for a while, get a job, pay some of your bills. I'm never gonna quit playing! Never!